Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank you for your interest in this case and for being here today. I'm Amy Sanders, and I'm the media coordinator for the FBI Denver Field Office. Here with me today are Thomas Ravenelle, Special Agent in charge of the FBI, Luke Franey, Special Agent in charge of ATF, Peter Carey, Chief of Police, Colorado Springs Police Department, Bill Elder, Sheriff of El Paso County Sheriff's Office, and Todd Evans, Chief of Police, Fountain Police Department. If you could please hold your questions until the end of the press conference. You will now hear from the FBI Denver Special Agent in charge, Mr. Tom Ravenelle. SAC Ravenelle.
Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon, and thanks to all of you for coming today. I also want to acknowledge Mayor Stephen Bach, who's with us today, and the local chapter president of the NAACP, Henry Allen, who's in the front row here. And as you know, at approximately 10:45 a.m. on January 6th, an improvised explosive device detonated behind a building located at 603 South El Paso Boulevard, Colorado Springs, Colorado. This building houses the Colorado Springs chapter of the NAACP and Mr. G's Hair Design Studios. I will say at this time we will not speculate on the motive for the placement of the device, but we would be naive if we did not acknowledge the NAACP as a national organization has been the recipient of threats throughout their existence. That said, over the years, we in law enforcement have learned there are many motives for bombings, and the motive may not always be obvious at the beginning of an investigation, so we will not speculate. Our primary purpose today is to release a composite sketch of a person who was in the area at the time of the bombing and appeared to have some involvement, as he carried something down the alley just prior to the bombing and returned to his truck empty-handed at the time of the explosion. This individual is a white male, approximately 40 years of age, and balding. He was driving a 2000 or older model white pickup truck with side paneling or rails, a dark-colored lead bed liner in the back of the pickup truck, and an open or missing tailgate, and also a missing or covered license plate. We are also here to announce we are offering a $10,000 reward, jointly sponsored by ATF and the FBI, for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for placing this improvised explosive device. We're asking everyone to take a very close look at this sketch. If you believe you may know the person responsible for placing this device, or you know an individual fitting the description, especially one who drives a vehicle that I described earlier, please contact the FBI tip line at 303-435-7787. Today, I will not give additional details about the improvised explosive device, except to say that it was not a sophisticated device. Again, I want to emphasize that investigators have not ruled out any motive for this attack, and until we learn more, we will consider all possibilities as far as the motive. And at this time, we have no information to suggest that anyone else is at risk except the people who were on that street or who work on that street. Chief Carey and the Colorado Springs Police Department will provide additional patrols in the area of the bombing. Chief Carey is also working closely with the NAACP chapter president, Mr. Allen, and the owner of Mr. G's to implement other security measures for all impacted by this event, and we won't go into the specifics of those. I want to thank the public for their continued interest in this matter and remind everyone to pick up the phone and call the FBI tip line if you have information which could assist investigators. And please remember, even the smallest tip can make or break an investigation, as they may dovetail with other tips that we've received that are also small tips. Sometimes many pieces of a puzzle give you the bigger picture. Finally, I want to recognize the outstanding work of our law enforcement partners, the Colorado Springs Police Department, ATF, and the El Paso County Sheriff's Office and Fountain Police Department through their involvement, and the Vice Narcotics and Intel Unit continue to be great partners on this investigation. Thanks also to the Colorado Springs Fire Department and the highly trained bomb technicians from the Regional Explosives Unit who assisted. Rest assured, the agencies up here today will do everything we can to find the person or persons responsible and ensure they are held accountable. We will now take questions, and all questions can be directed towards any of us up here. Sadie.
How are you able to put together the composite sketch? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. How are you able to put together the sketch?
Witness descriptions.
Witness descriptions. Do you have surveillance footage or anything else that has been helpful to
I'll
you?
just say that we have witness descriptions
Okay.
at this time.
And you believe this person was operating alone, or can you not say that?
We don't have the involvement of anybody else at this time, but it's hard to say whether somebody's operating with others or not, just because one person may show up at the scene. In the back? I wouldn't say there were threats. There was somebody in there who was upset several weeks back. We're checking into that individual.
We have a question over here from the Gazette.
State
Ooh,
Patrol.
Right behind the bright light, sorry.
Yes, sorry. State Patrol referred, it sounds like, to CSPD that there might have been possibility of an individual in a car or finding of a car matching the description. Is there any information new today that you're aware of?
No. We have an individual who was driving that vehicle, the white-colored pickup truck, who got out of the pickup truck, prepared to carry something down the alley, and came back as the explosion was going off.
But today, specifically, I guess there was new information. It sounds like State Patrol referred this information to CSPD saying that we may have found the vehicle today. Okay.
Chief Gary says nothing new.
Hi, I'm Michelle San Miguel with KRDO. At this point, do you believe the person is in Colorado Springs or Colorado?
That would be impossible to say. As I said earlier, I don't want to speculate on the motive. All the law enforcement officers up here at one time in their career can probably tell you about an incident where if we were to say this was a hate crime or this was a terrorism incident, we could find out that somebody was upset with the owner of Mr. G's for some reason. So we're not going to speculate. We don't know what the reason is. We're not going to call it terrorism. We're not going to call it a hate crime. Right now, what it is it's a bombing investigation. Thank you. Ma'am? I'm not going to go into the componentry of the device right now because that's something that the bomber knows, and to give that information out would potentially lead to copycats, and then we'd have a hard time distinguishing between whether this was the original bomber or not. So we're going to keep those to ourselves right now. I'm not worried about copycats, but there are people out there who see things go on in the news and think, geez, I could do that. So we'd like to distinguish from one investigation, one subject to another, and that's one way we can do that. It's just like bank robberies. We never like to give out the actual amount because only the bank robber knows how much he got. Same thing. Ma'am?
Can you describe the extent of the damage that the bomb would have done if it fully ignited?
That's going to cause some speculation. I'm a former bomb technician. I don't believe it would have caused much more damage. But again, whenever we have these things, and if we're getting ready to go to court, oftentimes what we will do is we will make a very similar device. We will take it out to an off-site location. We will test it to see exactly what it would do. So I'm not going to speculate because until you actually test something like that, you really can't tell. I mean, I've seen before where we ignite fireworks in the back seat of a car, and it literally blows the car apart, and they're just fireworks. But, you know, people say, well, I just had fireworks, right? So it's best not to speculate on that.
We have a question over here, sir.
Other than the placement of the device, is there anything to suggest that the organization was targeted?
No, and that's why we don't know who is targeted, you know? Again, only the bomber knows why he put this there, and we don't know why he put it there. Again, I'm not going to be naive. I know what the NAACP means to some extremists in this country, so we keep all possibilities open, though.
We have a question over here in the corner as well.
Eric Singer with the Gazette. My question would be, you had talked earlier about someone who was angry, who had gone into the building prior, and you had also said that the smallest of tips could help. So with that in mind, that person who went in angry, we're not putting 1 and 1 and adding up to 2, it could be 20. So the question is, what was that person angry about, and who was he confronting?
I don't know who specifically he spoke to. My understanding, I did not speak to the gentleman myself, but my understanding was he felt that the NAACP wasn't representing him as they should be. And Mr. Allen's nodding his head, so that would be correct.
Do we have any other questions?
I'm not going to comment on that. We're going to track that one down, and we'll figure out what this gentleman has to say. So if at any point in time we rule him out, then I'd be happy to confirm that he's ruled out. Otherwise, we'll look at him just like we would anybody else.
One of the witnesses we spoke with talked about how when this individual drove off, I'm back here, sorry.
Sorry.
Anyway, one of the witnesses we spoke with said when the individual drove off, he drove off in a very almost cold way. He was not trying to get out of the area. He was going very slowly. Can you talk about whether or not your behavioral analysis unit is involved in this?
Not as I know right now. That's a thought to get them involved, but there's not a lot to go on right now for behavioral analysis. Oftentimes when they get involved, it's because there's a series or you have something that you have a lot more information on.
And one other question, can you talk about the volume of tips you've received in terms of the description you put out was fairly specific.
Right.
Can you characterize how the public's involvement?
We've gotten some tips, but I would not say it's a large amount of tips. So definitely looking for the public's help. Again, if they want to call that tip line, I can give that number out one more time, if I can find it, 303-435-7787.
We'll take 2 more questions.
You referred to this as a bombing investigation, not an explosive investigation. Are we considering this a bombing?
To me, they're one and the same. I mean, it is a bombing.
The backseat could be exploded.
Excuse me?
The fireworks in the backseat could cause an explosion, but that wouldn't be called bombing.
Intentionally causing something to explode, to me, is a bombing. Yes.
Who will be doing the forensics? Who will be leading that in terms of the investigation?
The evidence is in the custody of the FBI right now. So, and
Can we do one last question over here?
One more question.
Oh, you're going to hold it? So there seemed to be a little bit of confusion of what actually the damage on the building, because it seemed like there was a mark there a couple months before, and then there's new charring marks now. So could you explain what the mark was there, what the mark is, what it was before, and
I wouldn't be able to give you
what's
that
the difference?
information because I don't have that information. My investigators may, but I don't have that information unless anybody up here has that information.
But can you-
And here's the thing. Whether there was a charred mark there before, whether there's a new char mark that's a little bit larger, the bottom line is somebody placed a bomb outside of a facility with the intent of doing something nefarious. So that's enough for us to do the investigation. We don't have to have a certain degree of damage to prosecute somebody on this. So I would say I didn't ask that question of my people because it's really not relevant to how we move forward.
Can you talk about all the bomb, like the blast radius?
Last question. Talk about what now?
The blast radius? Because I know when I was on scene a couple hours after the bomb, there were, little pieces of evidence scattered across the street and someone else's lawn and all that. And can you talk a little bit about how big the blast was? Without going into how it was made and all that.
I don't have that information for you today. Sorry. Thank you all for coming. I will open it up if anybody wants to follow up with anything up here. No?
Mechanical question, where is the composite sketch available online somewhere?
Amy?
Okay. This now concludes the press conference. And in answer to your question, sir, I have hard copies of the composite sketch available for all of you. So if the media will please stay put, and I will give you those composite sketches. Also, later tonight, I will be emailing out the electronic version of the composite sketch. And if you have not been receiving my press releases or emails, then please see me, and I will get your contact information so that you can be added to my contact list. Yes, sir.
And I have one thing. I want to publicly congratulate Bill Elder on his election as sheriff and his 9th day on the job. We're doing our first press conference, so congratulations, Bill.
And one last thing is, I will continue to send out email updates as new information becomes available. Thank you. Okay, as long as I'm not in the picture. As long as I'm not in the picture.